This silver trophy represents a tradition that has been fought for since 1897. It has even survived the threat of 2 world wars. To win this trophy is the ultimate football achievement in the land. To be the best in Australia. But the price is high. To win it requires nothing less than the utmost commitment to victory. An all-conquering determination. An unstoppable will to win. It is to work, to sweat, to bleed. It is to run faster than you ever thought you could. To fly higher than you ever dreamed possible. It is to never give in, to overcome humiliation and use it as your strength. Yes, it demands much, and it takes its toll. It is not easy to achieve. It is the 1984 VFL Premiership, the ultimate reward.
And a very good afternoon, everyone, from the Melbourne Cricket Ground in Australia, and welcome to our telecast of the 1984 VFL Grand Final between Hawthorn and Essendon. The 2 teams that did battle on the same grounds just on 12 months ago, with Hawthorn then winning by a record margin of some 83 points. This year, it's Hawthorn's 8th appearance in a VFL Grand Final. Essendon have appeared in more than 20. Hawthorn going for back-to-back premierships, therefore, although the Bombers have not won since 1965. Interestingly, Essendon won that flag in that year when they defeated St Kilda, who were then coached by the leader of Hawthorn today, and that is, of course, Alan Jeans. It's a very colourful scene here at the Melbourne Cricket Ground at the moment, certainly a lot cooler than we would have anticipated for this time of the year. We have the balloons ready to go up. There are marching bands and girls out there, and indeed, certainly what we would expect on Grand Final Day. To find out what it looks like from the air, we go up to Peter Donegan in the Channel 7 News helicopter.
Thank you very much, Peter, and good afternoon, everyone, wherever you may be watching around Australia or around the world. And this is the scene from the 7 Sport helicopter above the Melbourne Cricket Ground on Grand Final Day of 1984. And even at our height of about 1,500 feet, it's hard not to be caught up in the atmosphere of this great sporting event. The white bags you can see around the oval are the balloons which will be released upon the entry of the 2 sides, Hawthorn and Essendon, onto this great arena, and everything looks set for a marvellous game, a replay of last year's VFL Grand Final. The traffic situation has flowed smoothly, all car parking spots are now taken, and the stands are filled with over 100,000 people expecting a great clash. We wish both of the sides the best of luck. May the best side win, and it really is a tremendous sight from up here in the Channel 7 helicopter before the start of the big game. Today in Melbourne, possibly 1 or 2 showers. We're hoping that they may stay away, and we're shooting for a top temperature of 13 degrees Celsius. At the moment, it's around about 12 degrees. A great day coming up. One of the sports spectaculars of the world, the VFL Grand Final. Let's return once again to the MCG in the central commentary position, Peter Landy.
Thank you very much indeed, Peter Donegan, who certainly does have a bird's eye view of the Melbourne Cricket Ground. We do expect a crowd of something like 100,000 here this afternoon, although about 5 minutes ago an announcement did come over the public address system that there were a few vacant seats on the top deck of the northern stand. I can understand that today because it is certainly very, very cool. As Peter said, we're expecting a top temperature of only 13 degrees, and that makes it one of the coolest Grand Final days for something like 18 or 19 years. Stephen Phillips is our roving reporter around the ground. He takes a look at the Melbourne Cricket Ground from another point of view. Here's Stephen.
The rain and hail that soaked Melbourne over the past fortnight has cleared, but now it's the calm before the storm as close to 100,000 people start packing into the Melbourne Cricket Ground, this vast grey coliseum for the classic showdown in Australian football between the Hawks and the Bombers. The players have been arriving for hours. Lee Matthews and his wife, Timmy Watson and his wife, Paul van der Haar, and of course some of the unlucky people in it. Peter Knights, who's out with a leg injury, arrived with his son, and so too did John Kennedy, who arrived on crutches. It's been a very, very disappointing year for those 2 players, but they're here to urge their teams on. The scalpers have been having a pretty free run. Tickets are advertised $60 to $65. They were being sold for $200 before that rain and hail bombed Melbourne last night. People are enjoying their barbecues in this break in the weather, and the club theme songs for Essendon and Hawthorn are really at the top of the hit parade. The kids are arriving proudly decked out in their club Guernseys, in the red and black of Essendon and the yellow and gold of Hawthorn, their hair brightly dyed and their faces painted. This is really that one great day of the year, that one day in September, and the atmosphere here at the MCG is electric.
Of course, one of the important parts of the VFL Grand Final build-up, the two team banners. They were just raised while we were in that break. Hawthorn's on the left and Essendon's on the right. Essendon's is the wider of the two. Hawthorn's is certainly the taller of the two, and I think we should congratulate the respective cheer squads who have done such a great job in putting those banners together. There's many hours gone into the work, the artwork and the design of them, and they certainly are very colourful indeed. And the cheer squads, of course, just part and parcel of the very colourful scene here at the VFL Grand Final. You can see the aerial shot, those white dots around the ground those white dots around the ground. Underneath those, the balloons that will be released very shortly when the teams run onto the grounds. Well, we wouldn't have a grand final without grand final umpires. Stephen Phillips has sought out the 2 men in white, and he talks to them right now.
Thank you, Peter. Well, the team that brought you the 1982 Grand Final, Rowan Sawyers and Glenn James, are back in action. They're back together for the 1984 Grand Final between Essendon and Hawthorn. Glenn must be a pretty good team.
Oh yes, Steve, I guess it is. I hope that we can provide the same spectacular affair as we did in 82.
You look pretty laid back. You relaxed, looking forward to it?
Yes, the nerves are starting to build up, of course, as the game gets closer and closer. And you know, everyone's a different game, and I'm starting to feel the pressure as well.
Rowan, I suppose one of the most memorable moments in that 1982 Grand Final was when the young lady took her clothes off and ran across the ground naked. Was it one of your memories?
Yeah, I do remember that day. Remember her pretty well, I should say. But she sort of kept going towards Glenn, so I only sort of had a rear view, I guess.
I think it's that charm. Yeah. What about the opening bounce? Who'll do the opening bounce? Who'll toss the coin?
Well, I'll be doing the opening bounce this year, seeing Glenn did it in 82, and Glenn will be tossing the coin.
Did you feel, I'll ask you first, Glenn, did you feel that you'd had a good year building up to the Grand Final? Did you feel it was one of your better years?
Yeah, yes, I did, Stephen. I felt very satisfied this year because I had umpired with a lot of young guys throughout the year, and that gave me a great deal of satisfaction to see that I'd helped them out during the year, and to be rewarded in this fashion, I'm very satisfied and very pleased about the whole thing.
And Rowan, did you looking back on the year, do you think that, you know, it was a year that you would have always been a contender for the Grand Final?
Oh, I think there's a lot of umpires always in contention, Steve, but, you know, I thought I had a good year and sort of just really kept it off. You know, it's fantastic.
Well, you've got a great team. The boundary umpires and the goal umpires are all ready. The trainers have done a good job on you, and all we can say is all the best.
Thanks very much, Steve.
Thanks, Stephen.
And we'll go back to Peter Landy.
Stephen Phillips speaking to Glenn James and Rowan Sawyers, and congratulations to both men in white. I'm certain they'll do a very good job here this afternoon, and like everybody else, I guess affected by nerves, certainly for the first few minutes of the game. All right, well, let's go back now to our player profiles. We couldn't quite find them a few moments ago. Right, all right, well, we're not going to that. Gentlemen, good afternoon. Lou and Bob.
Well, good afternoon.
Pretty hard to hear, yeah?
Well, good afternoon. I think you summed it up pretty quickly there, Pete, when you said everybody's on pins and needles, because it doesn't matter how many grand finals or how many grand finals you've seen, we all get this tremendous amount of adrenaline running. Bob, I know that you feel the same way, and I can just imagine the players in the dressing room. I can remember playing my first grand final. By golly, I couldn't sleep for the first 3 nights before it, actually.
I think it's like the Olympics. You can have all the events through the year, anything you like, but there's nothing like the grand final.
Bob, you never played in a grand final.
Unfortunately, Pete, no.
But you still get affected by the atmosphere up here, don't you?
Always. You can't help but. And it's just, why do people, when they can sit back at home and watch it, whether they live in Queensland or anywhere else, they want to be here. There's nothing like the atmosphere of being here.
I think one of the greatest feelings too, Peter, is when you're in the dressing room and you're waiting to go out. You're terribly nervous. You go to the wrong place about 14 times, if you understand, because that is the adrenaline pumping. You come down the race, you've got to break through the sound barrier. Today it's the screen that the young kids put up, and then you run around the ground and you do about 100 yards, and I'm not kidding, you are running on air for the first 100 yards, and But the moment they bounce the ball and someone gets flattened, which they usually do in a grand final, bang, it just goes bang. Well, there they are in the dressing room now, and I can just imagine how those players are feeling, Bob, because they're certainly all keyed up.
Well, you've only got to look at the expression on the faces, Lou, just to see how keyed up those players are. Lee Matthews there, and there's the Prime Minister Bob Hawke, but he really looks a lot more relaxed than Alan Jeans, and it's not surprising so. But Michael Tuck, and look, the tension is written on the faces of every player.
I know that Alan Jeans has been very nice to the Prime Minister, but I think he could do without that at the moment. But you've got to be courteous, haven't you? But Jeans, he's a very astute coach and a cool, calm and collected sort of a guy. And let's be honest about Kevin Sheedy too, Bob, because he played, I think, in 4 grand finals, 3 winning ones, so he knows what it's all about, the actual feeling about a grand final.
It certainly does, Lou, and I think that Kevin Sheedy would have learned a lot from last year. And Kevin's the first to admit that they made mistakes, and Kevin is a chap who learns from mistakes. And so I think, like the coach, the whole team will learn from any mistakes they made last year.
Stephen Phillips has some news for us downstairs, I believe, on the team changes. Good afternoon again, Stephen.
Good afternoon again, Peter. As a matter of fact, both teams are still shrouded in secrecy. In the Essendon rooms, there are plenty of rumours, however. Leon Baker's supposed to be still in doubt with a thigh injury, Neil Clark with concussion, and there's still a whisper about Paul van der Haar. But I believe that Bahaja, Harvey and Thompson will play. In the Hawthorn rooms, I've heard that Payton and Eade will line up on the bench, and there is some doubt about Chris Langford being in the 20, but as soon as the players come out on the ground, I'll have a talk with both officials and get back to you. The ground in perfect condition. It's improved dramatically over the last 6 hours. A crowd upwards of 95,000. The league believe there might not be 100 here today, but they're promising a great game.
And here comes the Hawthorn side, led by captain and 300-game veteran Lee Matthews.
I think this is his 5th grand final he's played in too, Peter.
Yes, he played in the Hawthorn successful grand final side against St Kilda in 1971. He was there in 76, 78, last year, and again in 84.
Bob, I think if you were picking a side, the best Victorian side you could possibly pick to win a premiership, I think Lee Matthews would be one of the first players picked.
You'd never pick a side without him, no matter what it was for, Lou.
And it doesn't matter what age he'd be either.
As long as he can run, Lee Matthews is value out on the ground. Let's look at last week when Billy Duckworth did such a great job, but Matthews still kicked 3, or 2 weeks ago I should say, he still kicked 3 goals and gave away a couple. So if you consider that was one of his lesser days.
That's right. And plus the fact that when they were in trouble, it was Lee Matthews that lifted the side to win the game, and that's typical of Matthews, but they have plenty of match winners in their side. We saw Judge do so well, particularly in that first quarter in that second semi-final when he kicked a couple of quick goals. And of course, we must remember there were about 6 players in the Hawthorn side that were down the drain as far as form was concerned too. And Green, the Brereton, Curran, Michael Tuck wasn't up to top form, and we mentioned Matthews, and quite a few others weren't playing that well either, Bob.
Yes, the basic lineups of both sides will be very interesting to see, Lou, and just how the selectors see it. Both sides have a wonderful problem. They've got too much talent.
Alan Jeans, the Hawthorn coach, who led St Kilda to their only premiership back in 1966. He was on the losing end in 1965 when St Kilda were beaten by Essendon, but coached Hawthorn to victory over the Bombers last year in 1983. That was their 5th grand final success, Hawthorn playing in their 8th grand final, Essendon chasing success at 84, which has eluded them since 1965.
I think we should give full marks to the young kids in the cheer squad because they've done a marvellous job of these banners, Bob.
They do a wonderful job, don't they, Lou? They add colour to the work that goes into those banners for 1 second of action, really, because that's how long it takes those players to get through there. Sometimes they have a bit of trouble getting through.
There's been a cloud over the Essendon side, 3 players in particular, Paul van der Haar, Baker in the centre, and of course Clark that was knocked out last week. That's right. And whether these 3 players play today, well, it remains to be seen. We won't know until I think just before the start, Peter.
Yes, quite often they send players out there and they've got no intention of taking part in the match just to confuse the opposition. Whether it does or not, I don't know.
Well, I think the opposition have spies all over the place, whether it's Hawthorn or Essendon. They seem to know what's going on before the actual side that's trying to be so secretive.
I think the amazing part is the gatekeeper usually tells you.
That's right.
It's starting to rain, Pete.
Yes, we have a light shower of rain coming down at the moment. Well, the crowd, of course, can't run for cover because if they do, they would probably lose their seats even though they are reserved, and the hardier types would, I dare say, move along.
Pete, I don't think the rain will last long. I think it's only a shower, and of course we certainly hope so because of this big crowd. They're expecting a top game, and I think it'll be a great game here today, the grand final of 1984.
Well,
Clark's out there.
Has some news for us. Yes,
Baker's out there.
Stephen, let's go down to you again.
Thank you, Peter. I've had a talk to both team managers. Essendon, well, they're all fit and raring to go. On the bench will be Harvey and Thompson. Bahaja, Wood and Elshaw didn't make the final 20. For Hawthorn, well, Ian Payton is into the 20. He'll be in the opening lineup. Curran and Eade will be on the bench, and that means that Langford, Buckenara and Polkinghorne won't be playing.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Stephen. All right, well, let's take a look now, Bob Skilton, at some of the players to watch in this afternoon's grand final.
Well, no doubt when you're talking about players to watch, Bertie Di Domenico. Dippy, as he's affectionately known, what a wonderful game he played in that second semi-final, and we watched one of the great goals of football, and Di Domenico with 4 goals from the wing, a real spirit to Hawthorn. Russell Green, just who picks Russell Green up? Shane Hurd had the job in that semi-final and did a wonderful job. It's the quietest that Russell Green has been, and one would expect Green to come right back from that game, whether Hurd is on him or not. I think Hurd will be. Michael Byrne, one of the most improved players around, undoubted talent, very constructive with both handball and kicking of the ball, and Essendon tested him out in that early round and gave him one to go on with early in the piece, and I think Michael Byrne showed that he has come of age of a footballer. Lee Matthews, as discussed with Lou, would always be there. An inspiration to any side. He may be 33 years of age, but he's not a player that anyone would relish going out to have to handle throughout a game of football. Matthews again, he went back and lined it up and put it through. For Essendon, there isn't any better captain around than Terry Danaher, like Lee Matthews. They both lead by example, and there's no other way than to do just that, and it's Terry Danaher who has led Essendon magnificently right throughout this season and last. And Simon Madden, their number 1 ruckman, probably the most constructive ruckman with his telling ruck work in the league, and he's able to go down to full forward, which releases players like Merritt, and when Madden is at full forward, he's such a danger as well. Bill Duckworth at full back, solid as can be. Stephen, the toss is on now.
Thank you, Bob. Tails it is. Lee Matthews won the toss, kicking to the Richmond end of the ground.
Right, thank you, Stephen. So Hawthorn kicking to the Richmond end. That's the left as we look at from our commentary position. The wind out there, of course, does swirl one heck of a lot. So it will remain to be seen whether that is the scoring end. Did you see any of the reserves game, Bob?
Yes, quite a bit of it, Pete. But as far as the wind on the MCG, it does swirl around, and you can always score at both ends of the ground.
Graham McNaney and Peter McKenna are ready for us downstairs, guys. What's it look like from your point of view?
Well, Peter, what would nerves be doing to the players now? You've been out here in a grand final in front of a huge crowd. How would they be feeling?
120,000 in 1970. I know exactly how they feel. Graham, many of these players would have had sleepless nights, of course, and they would just be dying for this national anthem to be able to get on with the action.
Would any of them have slept over the last couple of nights, do you think, especially the younger players?
I think it'll be a lot harder on the younger players, Graham. The older players have been through it before. They'd still have those that tingly feeling right through their body, but you bet that many of them would have had sleepless nights last night for sure.
And we welcome at this stage viewers through ESPN in the United States with the news that the weather in Melbourne is cool and a little bit overcast. The national anthem has just been sung. The team's taking up their positions now for the start of play. And to all our viewers in the United States, and we have a few extra ones this afternoon because Australia's Davis Cup team over there will be very interested in the result. Neil Fraser, Pat Cash, Paul McNamee, Mark Edmondson, and Mark Kratzman will be very keen to find out how the teams perform, especially Pat Cash and Paul McNamee, who are very keen Hawthorn and Essendon supporters respectively, and also to our crew over there too, Alan Stone, Sandy Roberts and our camera crew. That's a real bird's eye view, isn't it, up in the light towers? How they got there, goodness only knows. I don't think I'd care to be up there, though, Bob.
I don't think they'll be there for long. I think something will happen about that. But I can imagine, Bob, this game starting off pretty torridly, too. I should imagine they're so keyed up, these players. And sometimes in the grand final, for the first 5 or 6 minutes, we see some pretty rough sort of football.
We certainly do, Lou, and the first 5 minutes of the grand final is often not the best brand of football because nerves take over and the tension which has gone right throughout the week and the players are really uptight and don't necessarily play the fluent football that one can expect of them, but that's the pressure of a grand final.
Certainly is, and of course I think Bob mentioned during the summing up there of the players that it'll be interesting to see just who picks up who, Bob, because the Bombers have been very successful with this tagging method they've had going over the last few weeks, particularly in the finals.
Yes, well, I do notice that Dunnell is on the wing on DP Domenico, Nagel on the opposite wing. Green, I know, has been selected in the back pocket.
Duckworth under Matthews, but that's no surprise. Madden has gone to full forward.
And of course, he's picked up by McCarthy.
Well, Danaher going to full forward.
Well, Madden's down there in the pocket.
Umpire Rowan Saws checking with the readiness of players. Players taking up their positions now. Hawker has the job of minding judge. DP Domenico and Hearn. And from the Melbourne Cricket Ground, we begin the 1984 VFL Grand Final between Hawthorn and Essendon.